Oh, hey, this is Chadillac. Welcome to the Cage Rage Podcast. I'm here with your co-host, fight analyst, archivist, historian, and all-around great guy, Miguel Ederati. Miguel, how you doing today?
Hey, thanks for having me, Chad. Always glad to be here on the CRP, and I don't know how great a guy I am, but here we are.
Okay, self-deprecation doesn't get you anywhere, brother. Hey, so we're talking the results from UFC 231. Great show. They said Dana actually released in the post show that this is the first time they've ever had an actual total sellout, meaning that there was not one literal seat left in the house. Now, I don't know how they could actually go through and do that and know that for sure, but apparently for the first time ever, there was literally not a seat left in the house. So in general, when they say a show is sold out, there's probably one seat here or one seat over there, but there's no area where two people can buy two seats, and that's a sellout, so to speak. And in this case, literally, you couldn't buy one chair if you were one person and you said, I have $1 million and I want one chair. You could not have bought it for this. So they had a really successful show. They had a really huge appeal. Sorry about that. Let me shut that sound down. They had a huge amount of success on the pay-per-view as well. And let's face it, they had some great fights. So what do you want to talk about? You want to cover the last two? First of all, can we give just kind of a heads up to to Gunner smashing the shit out of Cowboy's face with that elbow and choking him out? Can you tell me something about that just real fast? That deserves a nod.
Well, Gunnar Nelson's a guy that people have had an eye on for a long time. He came up as a little bit of a prodigy kind of thing. He's from, I believe he's from Iceland. I don't want to get the country wrong, but I believe he's from Iceland, which makes him unique. It's a small country, so, you got a chance at being a big star. It's a nice country with a nice economy and stuff, and obviously he's got access to good jiu-jitsu because he's a mountain in jiu-jitsu, right? The thing about it is after a nice UFC run where people were starting to talk about him as a potential contender, he went 3-3 since,
Yeah.
So, this is kind of like, are we going to get liftoff again? And so we'll see what his next fight is. With all due respect to Cowboy, Cowboy's got a lot of miles on him, and sometimes he's up and down. So, I'm not surprised that, Oliveira will be back too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
of course.
He is what he is. He's a mid card guy who you can put in and he'll make a nice fight and a nice challenge. But I think Nelson needed the win to get back to where people thought he'd be a lot further along at this point. When they were talking about him coming up.
Okay, good enough on that. Hey, I just wanted to mention it because I just kind of been a fan of the guy from Jump Street, so that's just fanboy shit on my part. Here we go. So let's talk about the co-main event, Joanne Jedrzejczyk and Shevchenko. Look, I was optimistic that Joanna could go out there and kind of get something done. I sort of knew in my heart of hearts that wasn't going to happen because Shevchenko could do exactly what she did, and that was anytime Joanna started to get off and get busy, Shevchenko closed the distance, grabbed her, and ragdolled her. And man, if ever somebody had been ragdolled and slammed to the ground as if she didn't even exist, Joanna found that out on that first takedown. When she hit the mat, she got a rude awakening as to what a real takedown was. She was taken down as if a full-grown man had taken down a little kid. Hard. What did you think about that?
If you look back at our pre-fight podcast, I think that you hit the nail on the head. You wanted to pick Joanne, but you picked Valentina because of the size difference. And once we'd analyzed it a little bit, we thought it was a tough mountain to climb. Especially now, once you look at if Valentina's walking off the street, that's one thing. But she had a resume from hell. You know what I mean? So it's not like she was going to be short experience or any of those things. It was almost like this was her time as well. Joanne, already was moving up in weight class, coming off a loss, a couple of Those are big questions for people. And she's trying to answer both of them at the same time. Now she's 0-2 in her last couple of fights, and we'll see where she goes. She was talking about going back to 115 and stuff. This is the thing about Joanne; she's a hell of a fighter, and
awesome.
The fight. When you get beat up for 4+ rounds or whatever, how you handle that or how you accept it, and you don't just tap out in the middle of round 2. That says a lot about what you're bringing into the fight, about the intangibles, about what you're, there's a lot of incentive in today's sport world to kind of live to fight another day and things. But, sometimes it may not work for you. There's a little bit that people like to see people leave it in the ring. And I'm pretty sure that Joanne gave us our money's worth. You know what I mean? So my hat's off to her for that. She's a hell of a fighter. She's not just a hell of a woman fighter. She's a hell of a fighter by any measure, and I'm good with saying that. But I think she got tossed. I think Valentina has a couple of fights at 125 where now the 125 division is a champion and it's active. I don't know. Joanna will probably go back down to 115. The one part I don't like about it for Joanne is sometimes some of those fights are hard to recover from, because she did get beat up pretty good. And, does she come back a little bit lesser, a little bit, more cautious, a little bit slower?
Yeah.
Or does she stay the dominant A-dog that she is, So for me, her next fight is going to be very interesting. How long does she take, Sometimes taking 14 months before her next fight. Maybe that's what she needs, like a refresher, period, heal up a little bit, get the weight cut. But I don't know, as you mentioned in the other podcast, with the way her body and musculature is 115 might be an extreme cut for her, right? So now she needs to go back. She couldn't hang with the champ. She could probably beat most 125 pounders, right? But where does she want to compete? There's a lot. Joanne really left herself a few open questions going in here. And, she's a champion level fighter, so she deserves to have some closure to some of those, and she's still kind of up in the air. So I think it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if, like I said, the fight took something out of her because it was a rugged fight, or how she bounces back, how long. Both theories work for me. If they rushed her back in 3 or 4 months after, or if she got suspended for, gotten beat up for a few months, if they rushed her back shortly after the suspension was over, I could see that, But at the same time, maybe it's time for some time off because, some of those fights, they add up.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on any of that, but here's the thing. She didn't get beat up. She got her ass kicked, but she didn't, both women could have taken pictures afterwards, like you like to say, and no one would have said, oh, God, it was a horror show on one side or the other. She's going to walk around. She might have to wear sunglasses for a couple of days, but, at best, somebody's going to think her boyfriend beat her up, not knowing who she is and that she'd have beat her boyfriend up. That all that aside, a couple of questions that I have about it is that, number one, she's been 125 now and she's put this muscle on. If I'm her, and I think her coach mainly is Mike Brown. Is that pretty fair to say?
I didn't know that. I know she's from Poland, and I know that
she's ATT now. So
it surprised me that she migrated to American Top Team once she, could pay the fees and stuff like that. You're talking about Mike Brown, the 145 pounder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mike Thomas. That's a pretty excellent guy in terms of experience and in terms of, mind and discipline and stuff. And he's a guy also who, when his day came, up in Massachusetts and he wanted to go further, he also sought out additional training and stuff like that. So Mike would be a great choice. I didn't know that. I didn't follow the training on the women's side.
My point is just this. If whomever her coach is, that doesn't even make any difference. My point is, if I'm Joanna's coach, I have her take 9 months off, which Dana in the post fight, he said, I want Joanna, because Dana appears to be really good friends with Joanna in some way. So he has kind of that special bond with her. Like he does certain, you can tell when Dana has a bond with a fighter and when he doesn't. And he has one with her. So she got a bigger payday than other people on this. She got some extra bonus money. She's getting some extra this and some extra that. And so that's pretty cool. I love that kid. But what I'm saying is this. What we learned about Joanna is what we've known about her all along, which is that when girls wrestle her, when fighters wrestle her and they're dominating wrestlers, she has a really hard time getting off. So Claudia Gadelha comes in and she tries to get off and she can't quite get off. Now she beat Claudia both times. The first time was pretty questionable, but I do think she won the fight. The second time she dismissed all of that and she beat her. But so there's the Claudia fight that they could do the third fight if they wanted to. Although she's beat her twice, there is some call for that at 115. You could do that. Claudia just lost, so she needs a win too. So you can't do that. I don't know where she goes at 115. She can't really fight Rose again until she fights a couple of people. That's a pretty sparse weight class, and a lot of those girls are going to be moving up to the 125 class so that they don't have to make that deep weight cut. So there's a lot of unanswered questions about where Joanna Jedrzejczyk goes from here. And again, I'm a fanboy, so you know she's my favorite, and I'd love to have her on the show sometimes. I've been a huge admirer since the first day I saw her. But my point is this: if I were her coach, I would put her in this next 9 months. I wouldn't have her throw a punch. I wouldn't have her bother with one single jiu-jitsu class. She would wrestle twice a day, every day, 6 days a week, and that's all she would do. She would be in the gym wrestling with men that were 105 to 115 pounds every single day, and that's all she would do. What do you think about that kind of about conceptually doing something different like that with her training to try and bring her along and change that hole in her game? Can it happen with somebody that's a superior athlete like her?
That's the coach's job. That's the coach's job. However they approach it is, you know, people are going to have different methods. I'm not sure that taking an athlete in their 30s and giving them a 9-month crash course in something as nuanced as wrestling isn't going to just leave you good enough to lose. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
But it is one approach. I'm more interested here in what my area is, because I think I could really take care of her, and that is in matchmaking. It just depends, and it would be to put together a plan. I could see her because of mindset and things like that, possibly wanting to come back fast. And if that's the case, and you want to accommodate that, then maybe you find an opponent that she'll be favored against, maybe even heavily favored against. But somebody who wants a shot and who's game and stuff like that. But I think you work with her, and you got to get her back on the winning track. I think after going 0-2, everything that does on your mind there, the layoff is a dangerous thing, because there comes a time period, then there comes an anxiety period, but there's also some period of relaxation, like you're not in competition, right? And then, like, after 9 months, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, we're ready to go, and then something happens, and then all of a sudden 9 months turns into 14 months, and now your mind and other things are all messed up. So I don't know that after going 0-2, barring an injury, that I'd hold her out too long. But it all depends on the matchmaking. I wouldn't rush her back into an A-line fight right now.
Listen, I can't believe I even missed this. I must be an idiot. The ATT line might be a problem here, because Ansarov is ATT as well. But, that's management, and they can deal with that. And ATT fights ATT. Money's money. Business is business. And they've had to do that before. Ansarov is the perfect fight for Joanna Jedrzejczyk to come back to 115. Ansarov made Gadelha look, I mean, she didn't humiliate her, but she whipped her. And Ansarov is she basically fought the exact same fight that Joanna Jedrzejczyk fought the second time she fought Claudia. You know, she stayed away from her. She used a snap kick and a teep to keep her away. She did all the right things by keeping distance. And every time Claudia closed distance, you know, she put her hips back. She used undercuts and did all the right things. Used her hips correctly. So there you go. Ansaroff and Joanna Jedrzejczyk this spring, late spring or early summer. I'm calling it right now. I think it happens. Bam, there you go. And by the way, Ansaroff is Amanda Nunes, her fiance, or at least for now. And if that continues, then, you know, could be her wife at some point by then. And they wind up getting married, and maybe you have the first ever championship marriage in the octagon, blah, 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 something like that. Great. Which, by the way, we happen to know a guy who got married in the octagon. Little trivia there for you. I'll give you $1 if you can tell me who it was.
Yeah, our hats off to Big Mike Camp out there, another Indiana club kind of guy. So, yeah, you know, to me that's interesting and everything you said there, but the bottom line is Rose has the belt. What are you doing with Rose?
God damn it. I love Rose. I'm not trying to deny Rose anything. I love Rose.
No, but you got to keep her busy, right? So
but how do you work?
See,
but do you give answer? Okay, do you put Ansaroff in front of Rose right now? Is that her next fight? She won 2 fights. Put her in Rose. Is that what we do now?
That's a possibility. You know, is if she's the next girl up. What I think I would do is, I might try to do a 4-woman tournament, like an unofficial 4-woman tournament. I put Rose in against the #1 contender, and I put Joanne in against whoever's #2 or #3 or wherever they are in there.
Agreed.
And then square out the top 4 girls. If Rose loses to Ansaroff, for example, then you get Ansaroff, Joanne in the finals, of Joanne, you know, and you just play it like a tournament. Like if the girls win, they win. If they lose, they lose, and you're not protecting anybody. I think that's a good challenge for someone like Joanne too, because taking a step back to like a B opponent is sometimes not a good move for some people. You know what I mean? If they've already competed a lot, they've already invested a lot, you know, that's right up there with taking a pay cut as far as, like, you know, if the guy's not motivated or the gal's not motivated to go into a fight, then, you know, you're really putting in an extra X factor in there. So I think that maybe a tournament of the top 4 girls with Rose and Joanne, maybe 3 lined up if they both win and advance in the tournament. You know, that could be a way to go there. I
like it.
You know, a lot, as you said, a lot of the girls are going to be moving up to 125. I don't know if that's the case. I think 135 is going to see some come down more than you're going to see, you know, girls move up. You know, especially after seeing Valentina. You know, I mean, you really got to get for the women. I'm gonna make a little bit of an assumption, but I don't think I'm too far off. I think you really got to be a champion on the women's side to get into even a reasonable payday. You know, I think the other girls are probably on the lower end of the pay scale all the way through. You know, right up until the champions. The champions probably make less than the men champions. I think you gotta have your eye on the belt. That's kind of one of the things that makes the women interesting, is that the women, you know, the way they train, the way their mindset is, the way they're preparing, they're like almost all gunning for the belt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let me 600 men on the roster. There's some guys that are just happy to be there.
Yeah. Let me interject something there that is an odd, just an odd little statistic here that I just happen to know about, and that's this: that on the farm market, that is not the UFC, but on the farm market, women get paid far more than men do for fights, even if their skill level is far less. So you can have a guy who's fought 17 times, he's 16-1, 15 knockouts or, you know, finishes of some kind, and a girl come in who's fought 4 times and she's 2-2, and she might make 1,000 and 1,000, where this guy who's 16-1 makes, you know, 500 and 500. So for whatever that's worth, because there's such a there's such a disparity in females in the sport and trying to get them in the lower markets. So for all you girls out there who are thinking, hey, I'm looking for a way to get paid, I need some extra money, and I've been training and doing this kickboxing thing, might be a way for you to find that thing, and you might wind up finding out that you're the next Joanna Jedrzejczyk, or you're the next Amanda Nunes. Just something to think about. That's the way a lot of these women kind of stumbled into a gym. They did it to stay fit, or they had a child and then they wanted to get fit again, or whatever it was, and they wound up going, wow, I'm really good at this. So for whatever that's worth. So hey, one last thing, Miguel, I want to talk about before we beat this to death. I know we've rode it hard, but I want to talk about Joanna all the time. I want the Joanna t-shirts. I want everything. I want everybody to know about her all the time, and so I like to give her extra time. Mike, give me a call. Let me know. We'll get her on. Hey, so one last thing. We've been talking about judging and judges being unqualified and things like that. How in the hell did one judge give one round to Joanna? Did you see it? I mean, where did that come from? How?
Look, the judging is going to be, every fighter in MMA has a much better mindset on this than boxing. But every fighter,
I agree, but it was almost a rhetorical question. But I just want to know if you noticed it.
I can't give Joanne a round. I've judged MMA obviously, and I've judged boxing obviously, and it's one of those things where I don't know that everybody's that prepared to do that. Joanne was a champion. Sometimes it has to do with normal human nature things. That's why I'm not saying every judge is a bad judge and stuff. But normal human nature, the bottom line is that judge, and I don't even care who it was, but they may have never judged a Valentina fight before and been through 3 of Joanne's.
Right.
Just some familiarity and stuff like that. At certain levels, things become really nuanced, and especially at a world championship fight. In that fight, you really got to be stretching it to find a round you can give to Joanne. So, but it has to do with mindset, what you're trying to do. Sometimes if you're not real disciplined as a judge, you could run into that. I've given her 2 rounds, and the 3rd round was a little closer, so maybe I'll just go ahead just to shake things up.
Yeah, maybe so. Okay, good enough. Good enough. I mean, we can't. There's no point in beating it to death. I think I got the job done. I don't think Joanne's got any problem with it. It's an afterthought this time. The MMA judging and the boxing judging is still an accident waiting to happen in some way, shape, or form. Right. So just to kind of wrap that up then and conclude what we were talking about with John and in the big fight this weekend with Shevchenko. Basically what Miguel is suggesting probably is going to happen next, and I tend to agree with on most levels, is that Joanna is probably going to come back down to 115. We pretty much know that's going to happen. I wonder what that cut's going to look like. What I do think is interesting is when she makes the cut, and I believe she'll make it, how much extra muscle is she going to carry and how much stronger is she going to be from that? Or how much more tired is she going to get more easily because of that deeper weight cut from being bigger for so much longer? So, there's a lot of questions about the weight cut that are going to come into effect when she does come back. But I really like your idea.
It just, and purely as, because I know that your knowledge goes beyond, just the gym and heads into the side of medicine. But I think that in terms of weight cutting, there's years and hundreds of examples. On the men's side, there's a lot of data. On the women's side, I'm not sure that there's, that in terms of what they weight cut, should they weight cut? What does it affect? Does it affect the childbearing system?
Yes, it does.
Like that. Talking out of ignorance, but just dehydrating yourself a lot to an extreme level could have a bad effect. It's just as a logic thing. I'm no doctor, but I would think women should shun the weight cutting, or at least fear it and face it a little different than men. I think just doing it the way a man does, I'm going to go in the sauna and drop 15. Man, men shouldn't do it. But I think here's a very real possibility where I'm not saying it's because they're inferior, because they're weaker, or because they're whatever.
No,
it's
absolutely.
because they're women. That they should scientifically say, do we do it the same as men? Or is there some limit, some threshold, or something for us tailored for women? Because Joanne, like we said it earlier and stuff like that. I mean, the Joanne's body fat percentage at 115 is pretty. Getting the Bruce Lee level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, shredded.
So, and you're in a situation where that's harder to get to, and even women we know a man grows.
Yeah.
But women grow too.
Yes.
You can see the difference. Especially so, yeah, I worry. I'm not waving flags for Joanne the way I was waving for Max Holloway, and I don't want to come across as somebody who's like always throwing out the dangers of things and things like that. But I think on the women's side that they all kind of take care of themselves already. They're worried about the sport and lifting it up and the women's and that they should be mindful of the weight cutting, and I think Cyborg is the prime example of a girl that at some point paydays were taken away from her while she was being held out to make a weight that she was never going to be able to make.
Right.
If physically she could cut off a leg and be 135 and walk in the ring or whatever it is, was she going to be able to perform? Was she actually? She's in her 30s, and I think she's talked about wanting to be a mother. I don't know, to get to 135, she may have been having to give that up. Is that really what the UFC is asking her to do? So it's like it's a different world for them than men.
Put it this way. Put it this way. Now, and again, I'm not an expert on this, so I don't want to try and step up and sound like I know what I'm talking about and I medically know blah blah blah, because I don't know all of this, but from talking to women in the gym that I've talked to about cutting weight, mostly in jiu-jitsu tournaments and in wrestling tournaments where they had to cut weight, they have told me on several different occasions and in MMA that it affected their menstrual cycles when they had to cut deep weight, that just training that hard would affect their menstruation. And so if they're cutting that hard, so when women don't have enough fat in their bodies, their menstruation can kind of like go almost. Okay, so for example, gymnasts.
So I mean, that's the one thing I think we just wanted to do.
Yeah. So let's not. Okay, we don't have to go there because obviously we're not gynecologists, so we'll just leave it at that. We're not endocrinologists. But yeah, so let's carry on. So hey, let's move on. Let's move on because this gets a little weird. Too old. One of them that looks like an old Woody Allen and another one who looks like, what do I look like now? Mickey Rourke. Uglier and fatter than Mickey Rourke. And I thought it was Mickey Ward, which would have been bad anyway. Okay, so don't you think I look more like Mark Wahlberg though?
That never crossed my mind.
What about no. Fuck. Okay, so listen, let's talk about the big show then, the one that everybody's talking about, and it just blew my fucking mind. Okay, so I called so to remind everybody on Max Holloway, blessed Max Holloway on the blessed train, and T-City Brian Ortega. I called T-City to end it with a choke. I thought he would get the choke, some kind of choke, either a guillotine or rear naked, in somewhere between the second and third round. For whatever it's worth, he did have Holloway's back for about 2.5 seconds in the third round and did have a partial rear naked choke coming. And it looked like he might have... Okay, yeah, I give up. I was so far off. Anybody who bet on T-City, and a lot of people did Holloway go in? Did he go in the underdog on that?
It was basically a pick 'em fight. it was basically a pick a fight at the end of the day when the odds came in and stuff. Here. First off, hats off to Max Holloway. Second of all, I take back nothing I said in the pre-fight thing. That for his next fight, everything I said in that is still up in the air. You know, is he going to show up the way he showed up this time, sharp in interviews? Because he started slurring words in interviews.
Yep. Before
a fight, you know. You do have to wonder why the fight was canceled?
Hey, can we talk about that real quick before we go any further?
So there's still going to be questions when Max fights, and they're for his own good, and they're for his own safety, and he's too much of a fighter and a hardhead to really be monitoring himself, so it's got to be done for him. So I understand that. But besides all that, it was an amazingly great performance for him.
Oh, my God.
He did answer the questions of that. To me, he put himself, especially with Demetrius Johnson, at a loss. John Jones really hasn't fought in 2 years. You know, to me, he could have put himself #1 pound-for-pound guy in the world weight.
Yeah, you know, when Ferguson and Holloway came on the scene, I remember saying, in 3 years, one of those two guys will be the best fighters in the UFC, if not both of them. And Holloway-Ferguson, to me, looks like, bam, I mean, let's do that. Let's do Holloway-Ferguson. But obviously, coming off a victory like that, obviously the smartest thing they could do McGregor and Blessed. I mean, man, that is the pay-per-view, coming off of defeating T-City, looking like high-tech Lomachenko in MMA. He goes out there, he had the highest punch ratio output of any UFC fight in history ever.
Yeah, it reminds me of an old George Masvidal quote where he said something along the lines of, "I'm going to hit him so much he's going to think the referee's also hitting him."
Right.
You know,
right.
And it had to feel that way for Ortega at some point. You know, I like Ortega. You know, sometimes when a guy catches a beating, you learn a lot about the guy in the way he takes it.
And absolutely.
I think he'll be back.
I know he'll be back. I don't have any doubt about that. And first and foremost, let's take our hats off to Ortega. Hold on. Let's take our hats off to Ortega first and foremost before we do anything else. And let's let everybody know that we have the utmost respect for T-City and what he did, because he went out there and he delivered in every single facet as best he could. He just couldn't unlock the puzzle of Max Blessed Holloway. And that's the bottom line. He couldn't find it. He couldn't figure out how to hit him. He couldn't figure out how to get an angle. He couldn't even attempt a takedown because there was nothing there to do except get hit. He was a standing punching bag. And I almost thought that he got hit so many times in the first 30 seconds that he wasn't planning on getting hit, because he does start a little bit slow here and there. And I thought, you know, so does Holloway though, right? And I think he was expecting Holloway to start slower than he did. And I think he got hit so many times so fast that it was sort of the Ronda Rousey, Holly Holmes syndrome, where Holmes hit Rousey and she never recovered from the first 3 punches she caught. And I think, I bet if we go back and we watch it in slow motion.
Well, I'll sum it up this way. First of all,
okay.
To give Ortega, I thank you. I want to tell him thank you for that fight. Thank you, because it was definitely a fighter of the year type of thing, and that sort of stuff. So thank you. There's no disrespect at all, but he was a little bit outclassed on that night, kind of thing. And like I said, you find out a lot about the way when a guy takes it that way and what he's trying to do and how he's reacting to when things are working. You got a guy, like I said, I think he'll be there back at the top. I think what you said about Holloway and McGregor, Holloway really did. I think now that's something we hadn't talked about. I thought you might, if you wanted to make McGregor, the thing is this is you're still trying to lure Khabib back, right? Khabib is still kind of pissed and not happy and still suspended. And the commission has actually put off their decision on how long his suspension is going to be till January 29th. So we won't even hear about it till full month into next year, what happens with Khabib, right? So, but my theory that I was pushing for was that you can make McGregor come in and do hard work and have him fight Ferguson. And then, the winner of that fights Khabib when Khabib comes back. And then with Ferguson takes the McGregor fight. It's a big payday. And, Ferguson's due the next title shot. That way you're not messing with the rankings. And you hope to be able to go to Khabib and say, look, at least we stopped babying McGregor. That was my theory. So now with this fight.
Okay, wait a minute. Time out. Back up a little bit. Repeat that for me. Slow it down for me and put that into words so I can understand it again. I want you to say that so that I get it all the way.
All right, I'm sorry about
because you kind of went boom, 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 boom. No, I just didn't get it all. I was paying too much goddamn attention to the lights. I'm sorry. We had a podcast coming off of the McGregor Khabib fight, and all the debacle after that. Yeah,
we did a podcast about what was coming for each of them, and I predicted that Khabib would be eating a suspension, and Khabib not fighting, and
we're waiting on him through February at least to even know what happens.
And we don't know how he is in mindset. Whether he's still telling the UFC, "Fuck you guys, I don't even want to fight for you guys anymore." They're gonna.
Well, he's not going to do that.
But we'll see. We'll see, because he's got reason to be not happy. And sometimes when you're from a different culture and stuff, pride like that really is something that I can't take a measure of. Really? I don't know what he's capable of.
You really think he would do that?
Stranger things have happened, and again. He's been very proud of his culture, right?
Okay, that's pretty big conjecture. Let's move on from that. Go to the next stage.
It is conjecture. It is conjecture, but I think at the very least you're looking at what becomes a difficult negotiation for him to be happy coming back, and we don't even know when that is. Agreed. I thought one of the things that might give him a little bit of happiness is before, when he fought McGregor, it was like McGregor had carte blanche to do whatever he wants, and then Khabib kind of does. Wins and kind of earns the shot to say, hey, look, I'm going to disrespect you here, and does what he does. And then he gets shit on, and he's like, what? They let him get away with all that. And that's the bottom line is that they did. They let McGregor talk about the guy's father and everything.
His religion.
If you know Khabib, why take it that level? You know what I mean? But anyway, so McGregor does that. Khabib is so he thinks McGregor's privileged. So what would make him convinced the UFC is no longer privileging him and stick him in with Ferguson instead of babying him? That was my theory. Now, I think Holloway comfortably steps himself into that discussion, because Holloway, his last loss was to McGregor. So you've got the storyline there. He's won 13, 14 in a row, whatever it is, since McGregor. So you've got the storyline there. And, forcing McGregor to give a rematch to somebody he beat already, that also qualifies to me as forcing McGregor to do the work you force anyone on the roster to do when you stop babying him.
Yep. Okay, so what you're really saying is this. Ferguson is in the market. He should be in the market, and he deserves to be there. They need to take care of him. And they have to get him in the mix somehow, because he's too goddamn good to not be in the mix, right?
Ferguson has to. If they gave Colby Covington an interim title, even if it was for convenience, then Ferguson has to be in a title shot in his next fight. Agreed. And he has to be in his title fight promptly. It can't be, we'll wait for Khabib and do the fight. It can't be that.
Yeah.
You can't sit these guys, especially when they're healthy, especially when they haven't been healthy. So it just derails them. So you got to get him to fight. The theory of now, here's the other part. The UFC could just circumvent McGregor, stick with the McGregor and Diaz plan.
Yeah.
And keep him out of it, and then force Holloway to fight Ferguson for the interim belt. Winner gets.
There you go.
That's real competition. That puts McGregor back on the sideshow circuit.
Yeah.
So they can do either one of those.
That's what I was going to say. Okay, so I'm going to put on my promoter's hat right now. And as a promoter, I'm going to talk to you as a promoter. You're going to talk as a matchmaker. I'm going to talk as a promoter. As a promoter, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, look, I can make a ton of money on putting Holloway against McGregor right now because it makes sense. I've got a storyline. I've got a build-up. I've got all that. Here's the problem with that. McGregor takes another loss. That's 3 in a row because Mayweather beat him, Khabib beat him, and now Holloway's going to beat him. Because there's no doubt in my mind that Holloway's going to kick the shit out of McGregor. I mean, McGregor's #1 suspect is always his conditioning. He looks great until he gets pushed. As long as he's pushing, and as long as he's determining where the action is going and what the pace is, he's fine. But when somebody else can determine the pace, like Max, and see, Conor cannot handle what happens when somebody gets on top of him. And Max can get on top of Conor. Make no doubt about that. So what I'm going to do as a promoter is I'm going to do exactly what you just said. I'm going to finish the Diaz franchise because I believe I've put Diaz on hold long enough and Conor's put on enough size that I can get Conor in shape and get him ready, run him through enough drug regimens and everything else when he's on suspension to probably get him to pass through. If I can give him enough gimmies through USADA and all that kind of stuff to get him really ready. I'm talking about cheating and all of that stuff that real promoters do, not the pretend world where none of this goes on. I'm talking about what actually happens in the real world of promoting. And I'm not saying that the UFC does or doesn't do any of this. I'm just saying in the real world of like Rocky, if you're watching this on a film, this is what a promoter would do. So you take it however you want to. Okay? So what I would do as a promoter, if I were the proverbial evil promoter, I would stay with the Conor McGregor, Diaz trifecta, and I would hope that McGregor wins that. And I would think that McGregor probably wins that because I've kept Diaz on the back burner so long that he's gotten fat, he's gotten sloppy, he's not training the way he used to, he's got tons of ring rust. I'd probably even give McGregor one really super easy fight in between as a tune-up if I could, and put him on more or less an undercard, say a kind of a co-main event, but the third fight of a double co-main event, something like that, and I would do that in the spring as soon as he's off suspension. Then some big show, say 4th of July kind of show, that's when I would go ahead and I would do the Diaz fight with McGregor. In the interim, what I would do is I would take Max Holloway and I would have him fight Tony Ferguson. And I would have them fight for the interim belt. That makes a lot of sense. Those guys, they look alike. They feel like the same kind of fighter. They've even sort of got the same sort of tattoos and stuff, you know. There's so much about those guys that when you see them out there, and I think Blessed runs through him. I think the Blessed train runs through Ferguson as well. And running through Ferguson is not some small order because Ferguson is a bad, bad man. And I'm not saying that would happen either. This is just my dream experience as a promoter. If I'm setting it and I want it to go my way, and this is what happens. Holloway then beats Ferguson. Ferguson then can go on the back burner and he can fight some other people. Maybe even Ferguson fights Khabib on his way back up. Something like that. Well, you got to let Khabib fight the interim belt holder, which then would be Holloway. I think Holloway probably beats Khabib. I think he probably beats him handily. Then you bring in McGregor to fight. McGregor and Ferguson fight. McGregor's in the best shape of his life. He's at the peak of his career. He's, 4 fights into his 8-fight contract at this point. And you've only got 4 fights to worry about now. And you're probably not going to get that much more money out of him. And so you're kind of looking at a Vanderlei Silva or a Chow Sonnen or something, kind of going off into the sunset, and they're going to go someplace else and make a little bit of money and do the Tito thing or whatever at some point. What do you think about that whole scenario? I know that's a big rundown, but how's that work? Am I off? Am I crazy? Am I?
No, I think the only thing I would caution is I would caution that, yeah, at the end of your scenario, Holloway and McGregor, that's very plausible. But Holloway, fighting Khabib and Ferguson and getting through both of those are pretty much, those are going to be even, I don't know that that's something that we can definitely say that Holloway's going to be the guy coming through. I'm not saying he's not, but I'm saying that you got three pretty even guys there, so you're going to be looking at 50-50 fights.
Yeah.
And I think the nice part of it is your scenario works out well with the guy who gets through the Ferguson, Khabib, Holloway trio. The guy who comes out on top of that is rewarded with a McGregor match for money at the end of it, and yeah, that sucks money up, pretty good.
Assuming that McGregor beats Diaz too.
Yeah,
or you just don't do the Diaz fight.
Fights in this contract, McGregor loses to Diaz, then you could start thinking about McGregor versus CM Punk and McGregor versus Mickey Gall, and start trying to salvage some shit.
Yeah, start trying to sell the circus again instead of, start doing Mayweather. Bring in Mayweather and let him fight McGregor in MMA, and you have the biggest pay-per-view in history again, and whatever. Yeah, who gives a shit about all that? But you know what? We've gone 4 MMA shows without saying McGregor's name one time until today. But when you're talking about 55, at some point he's got to come in, right?
Yeah, he's there. He's the elephant in the room and stuff. But I think the bottom line is, coming off and wrapping up for UFC 231, they had a stellar show. I think especially you were high on the main event. It's rare a main event lives up to expectations, and this one did. Even though it really wasn't that close a fight, but it did because you had two guys executing everything at a real high level, and it worked out. So yeah, we definitely, what that means is when you get a good UFC, you get a lot of tangents and a lot of possibilities that emerge from that, and I think it's been good for talking about that.
Hey, can I ask you just one more thing, and then we'll wrap it up on this because I know we've gone long, but. Listen, when I'm watching, and I've just been recently kind of brought back into boxing because we're covering boxing in this podcast all the time now. You guys have introduced me to Lomachenko, and I'm totally man crushing on the guy. I'm a fanboy like crazy for him. He's unbelievable. He fought this weekend on ESPN. We're going to talk about that in a little while. Tell me about the sequences that Max Holloway went through compared to the Lomachenko sequences. Tell me about how those two are alike in comparison, boxing and MMA. Do you see that, or am I crazy?
The sports are very different, but I think what you're witnessing is the old cliche of a guy who's thinking several moves ahead of where he is and where your opponent is seeing you, so it does look accelerated or hyper. I call it like a hyper mode for Lomachenko, where you're just like, it's like when Tom fought Jerry, and Jerry's doing the thing and he gets so fast that you're just seeing a blur. I think that's kind of what it's got to be like for the fighters, right? Because it seems that way because he confuses really good guys. When you see really good guys and they're confused, and you talk about world champions at the Lomachenko level, then yeah, you're talking about somebody that's unique. With Holloway, I think that's what I think you said it earlier in the podcast that they're both slow starters, and I think right there you could sum up the fight right there. Is the champion showed up, and if you could say he was a slow starter before, you can't say that now.
No.
Meanwhile, the other guy came in with the same game plan. Who changed things up from the very get-go and did something different? And I think it's once you start, especially in the octagon, where you don't have a gi, because gi, then you can really say whose jiu-jitsu's better and stuff.
Yeah.
But when you in the octagon, where a lot of things are equal, it does come down to game planning and some of the things that you see that the camps that are superior at are the camps that emerge at the top. In boxing, you recently saw another example of that with Tyson Fury, who at the end of the day got himself to a draw in a world title fight. Managing a fight, managing a style fight. by being one step ahead of his opponent, you know. And he had Wilder caught up to him twice, dropped him, and that confuses the cards and gets you into, you know, another situation, another story. But yeah, I think that's what we want to compliment Max. Max was dictating, and Ortega was not keeping up with the notes. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, hey,
Lomachenko does the same thing to people, so I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, listen, this has been a great podcast. I've had a blast doing this one. Catch us on the upcoming Cage Rage podcasts about 232. We're going to talk a little bit more about. We're going to cover the ESPN fights from Lomachenko this weekend. We got a boxing podcast coming up pretty soon. So a lot of great stuff coming up.
The UFC announced Ben Askren against Robbie Lawler.
Oh, my God. Yeah, we got to cover that one yet. That's going to be freaking awesome. Okay, so listen, lots of super cool stuff, but none of this can happen if you don't push the freaking button below that says subscribe. So subscribe. We've been picking up people slowly and steadily. A lot of people sharing this. We've had a bunch of Twitter people jumping up and starting to share us on Twitter. So it's starting to show. You know, we knew we were gonna take a year to build, and we're starting to really see it. And we're very, very thankful for everybody who's sharing us and subscribing and passing us around and telling us what we need to do to get better. So keep it coming. We love it, and we want to know more of it. So anything else, Miguel, before we go?
No, always glad to be on the Cage Rage podcast. Glad to see it growing with you. Love the stuff you're doing. Glad we got Scott aboard, and looking forward to working with him on future podcasts as well. A little more wrinkles to the boxing end of things, and you know, just staying consistent, doing the best we can. Enjoying it.
Namaste.
So let's get the party started.
Do it. Come on.
Okay. No! What? What? No! No!
You would need 3 promotions to get to be an asshole.